For a couple of years now, my Streptocarpus, once the pride of my collection, have just failed to deliver. I will show you a clip of what they did look like when they were at their absolute best, and then steadily, as time's gone on, they have declined. So the kind of decline we're talking about is weak, floppy leaves, yellowing leaves, just not producing the numbers of flowers that they ought to produce. I've ruled out several things, at least I think I have. I've ruled out pests. There are clearly no pests on the leaves, certainly none that I can see. I've sprayed them all anyway with systemic insecticides to make sure there's nothing hidden there that I can't see. I've drenched the media inside the pot to make sure there's no pests inside there lurking about that I don't know about. I have fed them with fertilizers specifically formulated for Streptocarpus. None of these things has made any difference. I do know that there were tiny little bush snails hanging around there, so I've done something to try and deal with those. That's not made any difference. I know the decline kind of coincided with when I insulated the greenhouse further with this foil insulation. I still don't think that is the issue though, because Streptocarpus still should perform within certain parameters of conditions, and I do feel that even though it can get hot in here, I do feel that they shouldn't be declining at the rate that they are declining. But I think I might have the answer, thanks to one of my subscribers who made a comment that just hadn't occurred to me. It actually falls into one of those many things that I knew it once and I've forgotten it. So what we're going to do is I'm going to have a closer look at what's going on inside these pots, and I'm actually going to try something that might just be the key to why these Streptocarpus are failing and why lots of potted plants eventually fail. So let's get started. So let's just have a quick look at what the problem is. You'll have to try and ignore those three begonias at the bottom there, because the rest of them are all Streptocarpus, even the ones that don't look like it. So for example, that one is a Streptocarpus, and this strange spidery looking one here is also a Streptocarpus. They're species plants. So this is not the display that I normally have. At this time of year, beginning of September, we normally have many more flowers. Yes, we've still got a few flowers on this plant here, on this plant here, a couple on here, but it's nothing like what I usually get. The plants in general, even though they've been fed, are really looking lackluster, and there's no real true root grip going on. It's almost as if the roots just are not getting a full firm grip, or something is eating away at them, or there's something going on in the media that really isn't conducive to nice healthy plants. So we have, as I've just explained, gone through the various things that could be the problem, and some of those I've only recently addressed, like putting a drench through the soil, so you wouldn't expect an instant reaction to improvements with these plants. So that might be part of it, but I think there is another issue that's coming along that's actually leaving them more susceptible to pests, and that issue, I think, is to do with the media and the fact that these plants have been in these pots for several years now. So we've covered all the different things that could be wrong with it, and I still think some of those could be certainly adding to the problem, but I think the main problem is something that I have totally forgotten about during the process of looking after pot plants, and that is, over time, what happens in a pot. Well, certainly the smaller the pot and the smaller the plant, you have less media, and orchid growers are very familiar with this. Sphagnum moss eventually rots. If you have something growing in sphagnum moss, it generally lasts a couple of years, and as it rots and breaks down, it makes more acidity, or it creates more acidity within the pot. The plants don't like this, and over time they decline, and eventually they will die. And I'm wondering if this is what has happened to these Streptocarpus. Most of these were last repotted in 2022. It's now part way through, getting on towards the end of 2025, and I'm wondering whether the media has begun to rot. Multi-purpose compost, which is what these are in multi-purpose compost and perlite, most of them, and that does rot down, not to the speed that sphagnum moss does, but certainly over 3, 4, 5 years, pots this size, it will make a difference. And what happens is, as well as it rots down, the roots fill the pot, which reduces the oxygen in the pot, it reduces the moisture flow in the pot. It does all sorts of nasty things that we don't want. What we want is these roots to have a place to spread. It's no good me up potting a lot of them because Streptocarpus prefer to be in smaller pots. These are not big plants. They're not going to produce massive, go into much bigger pots than what they're in. Certainly these 10, 12 centimetre pots are about the size that I would expect them to get. I wouldn't expect them to get much bigger. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to choose a few and I'm going to do them in stages to see if there's any difference. There's no point me doing the whole lot. I'll choose the ones that I like. The ones that look like they're really tenuously holding onto those roots. There's certainly plenty to go at with things like this. I mean, that is not what the leaves should be like. They should be very firm. They should be a dark green, and they should be full of flowers at this time of year. And you can see actually when you get really close in to some of these how they have, they're only just holding on. And you can also see how Streptocarpus form rosettes, and over time those rosettes move to the edge of the pot. So you can see quite a number of them are right at the edge of the pot now. That is very, very clear. So, and the other rosettes have died off. So I'm going to perform a little bit of surgery on them and I'm going to completely chop them up. Now Streptocarpus are great because they only need a tiny, tiny little bit of root and they will root again. And I'm going to see if we can rejuvenate and save some of these plants and get them back to their former glory. I think that would be good. And it can also give me more space because I'm going to put them back in the smaller pots again. So let's see what happens. Let's see if we actually get a rejuvenation. There is still time for them to flower at this time of year. I've had mine in flower way up into December, but you know, this drastic surgery might put paid to that. We'll see. So we'll set you up on the tripod. I'm only going to do a couple for you to see. It's no point me filming the whole lot, and then we'll take it from there. Okay, I've got my media here. So this is a multi-purpose compost. It's a good quality one. It's peat-free, and I have added some perlite in there just to open it up. There's nothing special about this mix. It does have a John Innes mix in it as well, so it has a little bit of feed. So it's nice and airy, nice and fluffy, and that should be just about the kind of compost that the Streptocarpus will like to grow in. I've got a few pots ready here. I've cleaned them out. I've given them all a spray with hydrogen peroxide just to kind of disinfect them. Same with the snippers there, and all that remains is to get a plant and have a good look at it. Okay, let's move on to the next one. So this one is Harlequin Dawn. I can't even read the label, it's been in so long. So it's definitely a few years. And you can see how it's moved over to the side of the pot as the years have gone on. It looks like it's been eaten, but that's not, it's just probably some kind of deformity through spraying it with systemics, because that does cause deformity. So let's have a look, see what's going on in here. And I might have to just let my dog out again. It's not really, these roots aren't looking great. They're looking, I mean, they look as if I've overwatered, but I know I haven't. And see a little snail there, so that is definitely part of the issue. See these little bush snails, horrible things. Just let my dog out. For some reason he won't go through these, go on. So you can see where all the old rosettes were. You can see the spikes where they were, and they've all died away over time. Okay, we're going to get that chopped right up where I put the knife now. Let's go look at it. Keeping an eye out for these snails. Again, that could be the issue, you know, that could be what's causing the problem. But it's not just Streptocarpus that this thing happens to, where over time they just grow worse and worse for you when they're in a pot. Now, I'm thinking of garden plants that are outside. I think it will happen to them, it'll just take longer because you've got much bigger pot. So for some reason, when it's a bigger pot, it's likely to last a little bit longer, I think. So let's have a look. Obviously feeding them will help that. These are just old stalks, really. Doesn't look like there's much of that left, does there really? So I think we can chop that even more. That's just coming away anyway. So something like that. Let's see how we go with that. Doesn't look like there's much left of it, to be honest. Okay, I'll have to wash all that. I'm terrible at washing pots. I don't know about you lot. I find that there's far more interesting things to do in life than wash pots. I need to hire somebody, a pot washer. Okay, so I've got sphagnum in the bottom, for reasons that I explained before. Nice fluffy compost that can sit in the middle there. I'll just add a bit more. Hope I'm not blocking all this as I'm doing it. And then, right onto the repot. That can go back, and then we'll move on to the next one. And I'm only going to show you one more, and then I'll do the rest in private. Okay, so I like this one. Roulette Azure. And that was a Fleischer hybrid, and again, I can't read the date on it. So much for writing things on. Few flowers on, but that is not how it should look. These flowers look very, very lackluster, very floppy. Again, you can see how it's moved across the pot. And as the old rosettes have died, you can also see another bush snail there. I do think the bush snails are having a big effect on it as well. Now, whether it's a dead bush snail, I don't know, because I have given them a treatment. Gosh, yeah, chop that right away. Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt these roots are rotted because it's not holding together. So the only question is, what's caused that? Is it the bush snails? Is it the old compost? Is it just rotted because they've been in too long? And of course, you can't prove the counterfactual. We don't know, and we'll never know. And even if look at that, just come away. It's no wonder it's doing so poorly. Right, now this one is going to be a bit of a challenge because there ain't much root on that. Not much different from orchids really, is it? So let's get rid of some of these leaves, we'll chop them right down, and we'll keep the youngest. So we're going to keep a tiny little bit here. And let's see if we can get that gnarly bit there to root. I am dubious. Oh, well, that snail is definitely alive. At least it was. Okay. If it is snails, if it does turn out to be the problem, and that's what's eating away at the roots, then clearly my drench hasn't worked. But repotting them like this should at least help to solve it for a length of time, shouldn't it? Because I'm throwing out all the old compost where the snails were. I wonder whether just regular slug pellets will sort the snails out. And if anybody has any experience with bush snails and have managed to eradicate those, please do tell me in the comments. So we'll put RP 825, pop it in there. There we go. So the next one is mottil. Doesn't look very good at all, does it? So I will, there we go, I've got repot 11th of the 11th. Well, that doesn't tell me anything. I was obviously half asleep when I wrote that one. So let's have a little investigation. This one just hasn't grown at all. No surprise that there are no roots whatsoever. Do I spot any snails? Difficult to see because they're so flipping small. Tiny little fern in there. But there's not a lot going on. So that mix is going to have to be discarded just in case there are snails in there. And let's hope there are no snails in this bit. So this one is Harlequin Blue. Doesn't look too unhealthy, but no blooms, and my guess, yep, no roots. Now all these have flowered in the past. These are not new. Oh, we've got a little millipede there, or a centipede, can't tell the difference. Doesn't look good, does it? Look, it's just come away. In fact, I think that's the roots of the fern that's growing in there. Okay, so we've been through what might be the cause. I've tried various different solutions. None of them have truly worked. So having gone through that process now, you've seen me dividing them, chopping the roots up, having a good look at what's going on. I can see that a lot of the roots are rotted. You can see that the more the roots rot, the worse the problem gets, because obviously the media with the rotted roots in is going to turn more and more sour. So as soon as you get some dying roots, then it's almost like a cascade of problems going worse and worse, and then that side of the pot stays wet and it causes more rot and so on and so on. I can also see that maybe the snail problem is bigger than I thought. So there's two issues there. Possibly the snails are eating away at the roots, and there's more than I think there are, and possibly the media is just sour through being in a pot for too long. So the learnings from this are that if you have pots and you have floppy plants, it doesn't always mean that they just need more water. It could be that they've been in the pot for too long. It could be that you have bush snails. So there's two things that I need to try and deal with. So I've got an important update. Now, I've done many more of the pots. I've certainly not done all of them. And one thing I am is honest, if nothing else. And the purpose of this video was to prove to you, or show to you and demonstrate to everybody, including myself, that the reason for the decline was because they've been in the pots too long, which is kind of true, but I don't think anyway, that is the main reason. It might be a contributory factor, and it certainly is a thing, that if you leave a plant in a pot for too long, that is what can happen. The roots can rot, you can get lower oxygen, etc., etc., and the plant will decline. I have found in every single pot that I've done, bush snails either around the surface, like down the side of the pot, or on the surface of the pot, or like on the side of the plant pot. I've not found any actually in amongst the roots. So what I think's happening is at night they're coming up, surfacing, and they are rasping away at the base of the Streptocarpus. And because they're in an enclosed environment, they can't escape, there's nowhere to go, so they stay there and they eat what is going on along that base of the plant. The Streptocarpus becomes detached from its roots, the roots then die and rot off, and then that just causes that cascade of issues. That's what I think is going on. Now I believe, even though I've given them a drench of an insecticide, I believe the best way to kill them is slug pellets. So that's what I've put on there. I'm going to do the rest of the pots when I get some more compost. I've run out. I'm going to do I've left the ones that are looking reasonably healthy, but I'm going to do them all. By simply repotting, that can also help to break that cycle, that life cycle, but hopefully these slug pellets will kill them off. Some of these Streptocarpus, all the ones in the small pots have been repotted. Some of them had like practically no roots whatsoever. So it will be interesting to see whether they do come back. I expect them to, because Streptocarpus do root pretty easily. That's another one that definitely needs doing. Look, that's look at that, barely hanging on. And that was one of my, Pink Layla is one of the more easily grown hybrids. So let's see if we can save that. So yeah, that's where I think we're up to. So there is a few lessons there for me and for anybody else trying to grow Streptocarpus in an enclosed environment. And this is one of the reasons why, I guess, it's not always a good idea to grow the same plants. It's good in a way that you can actually begin to specialise in them, but then you do build up pests specific to them. Although I know bush snails can get in anything. They're horrendous to get rid of. So I believe another thing you can do with bush snails is if you put some sharp grit, really rough grit on the surface of the pot, that prevents them from surfacing. So that's something else that I might try. I might have to get some grit. Oh, it's all money, isn't it? If anybody has had bush snails before and I've managed to solve that problem, I'm not talking about in orchid pots. I think it's easier to solve in an orchid pot actually. But if you've got it in something like this where you can't actually see them, or it's difficult to see them, then do let me know what your solution is. And if anybody has experienced the kind of situation that I've got and I've managed to solve it by simply repotting, I'd also like to hear from you there. So that's today's video. It'll be great to see a follow-up to this, I think, and to see in a few weeks whether those that I've repotted come back again. Let's see where we are with it. So I'm going to go and do a few more now, and I will see you on the next video. That's it for now. See you on the next one. Bye.